So both candidates, they want votes. They want people to back them, and so they'll do whatever they can.
Just the support, having them come out here and show that they actually see us.
You just heard from two UAW workers giving their take on picket line visits from both President Biden and former President Donald Trump this week. Biden expected to join the auto workers at some point today, and we heard Donald Trump is supposed to do the same tomorrow. Once again, we're joined by Professor of Business at Wayne State University, Marick Masters to my right, and CEO of the Lee Group, Mark Essley, on my left. And we're going to start with you, Mark. We do want to talk about social media and how it's changed the game, but I think more importantly, or at least this week, Biden is here along with former President Trump. What does it mean to have both of those gentlemen here this week?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I think it's more optics than anything, quite
Sure.
frankly. And excuse me, President Biden's coming certainly today to walk on the picket line, from what I understand, in Wayne, Michigan. So I think it's this way of saying, I support the workers, I support the union. So from an optics standpoint, I understand what he's doing in that respect.
Yeah, and then Marick, on this same line of questioning, does that do something for the UAW workers on the picket lines? Does that maybe rejuvenate themselves out there when they see Trump and Biden out there?
Maybe modestly, but I think the gentleman is right that this is really optics. I don't think it's going to have any material impact on the negotiations. They're here for a visit, two presidential candidates taking advantage of the situation for basically themselves. Biden is in a different position because he's the incumbent president, and if this strike goes on for a period of time, he may be called upon or feel necessary to get involved more directly. And I think by him coming here and siding with the workers, he'll be able to say to the workers, should that point become necessary, that I came here and stood with you, now I want you to listen to me.
So do we think that either of them visiting, will there be, this is for either of you guys, will there be any progress made, or seriously it really is just optics?
I think, personally speaking, I think it's optics. I mean, I think the negotiations need to continue with or without them here. If they didn't come this week at all, guess what? They're still negotiating.
Correct.
Bottom line.
Yeah, I would hope they're negotiating while they're here.
Yeah.
Once the agreement gets reached, I remember when I was talking to UAW workers, they still have to ratify said agreement. I mean, are we in for a months-long strike, I should say, with UAW workers, you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know how long the strike will last, but if the unions insistent on getting certain things like retiree health care, defined benefit pension plans, the strike's going to last for a long time. If they're willing to concede on those points, I think Ford has made them a very strong offer. It's not enough for them to negotiate a tentative agreement now. But once they settle, get a tentative agreement, it can be ratified relatively quickly.
Okay, and in the break, Mark, you had brought up social media, the advent of it, how it's changed strikes. I mean, you brought it up to me, so obviously you feel some type of way about it, but how has social media changed how people go on strike and picket?
Let's go back 50 years.
Okay.
40 years. 4 years ago. Social media did not play a major part in it. The people would go behind the scenes to negotiate behind closed doors. And then one day, voila, we had a big contract. What we're seeing now is social media is being used to communicate in real time. And in fact, both sides are negotiating, particularly on the UAW side, they're negotiating using social media.
For example, Sean Fain using his Facebook Lives.
Every opportunity is out there using Facebook Live. He's communicating in real time. He's asking for comments along the way. So again, traditionally, people would have gone to the TV stations, they would have gone to the newspapers, they would have gone to the radio stations. They're still doing that, don't get me wrong, but now social media has played a tremendous part.
So it's been advantageous for the unions to...
Oh, absolutely. It's been advantageous because what's happening is he can tell his side of the story. And he can certainly say, this is what we put on the table, this is what the big three, the Detroit three have refused, right? But this is what we put on the table. So yeah, he's playing it to his advantage.
Marick, I know we keep talking about the UAW strike. It's most important here, obviously, in the heart of Michigan. Economic impact. It looks like a lot of the dealers don't have a lot of supply left and can't really hold out that much longer. On the flip side, workers are only getting paid, so much, so $500 a week. Some aren't even getting paid. It just kind of depends who they are. What does this economic impact look like maybe in a year or two? How does that look?
Well, I think in a year or two, the parties will have recovered if the strike is relatively short. Right now, it's estimated that the strike has cost the parties about $1.6 billion, but that's in an economy of over $26 trillion. So that's just a slice of the economy. But if you stretch it out longer and widen the scope of the strike, a strike, for example, at one of the companies for 4 weeks could cost those companies about $500 million a week.
But what about consumers?
And it could result in higher prices for automobiles. It depends on what happens. But obviously, when you don't have production, there's going to be a shortage, and that's going to put pressure on prices, unless they really feel like they've got to sell the cars to get rid of them. I don't think they'll want to do that.
With that in mind, too, inflation, we know, has gone up tremendously in the past couple of years, if not just maybe the past 2 or 3 years. Has that changed how maybe they are at the negotiating table?
Very much so. That's why they want COLA back. And Ford gave them COLA. And actually, that surprised me. I didn't think they'd give them COLA, but they gave them COLA. Inflation was up at 9%. Now you have the former Secretary of Treasury, Larry Summers, saying that, you know, if you look at patterns in the 1970s, this is very similar. He anticipates another spike in inflation. And if you see that, particularly see the price of gasoline go up, that will have major implications for the industry and workers as a whole.
Mark, with your expertise, what do you think is something, it is a complicated topic, and we can only talk about so much on here at the desk, that the public might not know that's important for them to know about when you go on strike or when you're a member of a union? What's important for them to know?
Yeah, I think what the public needs to know is that they're not striking to hurt you as a consumer. What they're doing is they're striking to help their cause. They want to get their wages increased. They want protection. And I mean, I guarantee you that the majority of those walking the picket line today do not want to be on strike. They need the wages, they need the resources. On the flip side of that, if you're the public, respect their decision. I know that bottom line is you want to buy a new vehicle, but also respect their decision. They have a right to make a fair wage as well.
Marick, 12 days in. Oh, you want to answer the same question? Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say that there's nothing any more dreary than being on a picket line.
Yeah.
And the workers, as you mentioned, you know, they're taking a major hit in income. And some of them may lose their health care and have to, if the union doesn't pick it up for them or can't pick it up right away. So this is a major sacrifice on their part. And they're not in it to hurt the consumers or hurt anybody else. They're in it for the betterment of themselves. And they believe that that will end up helping produce a better product.
And we know, at least from what I've heard from UAW members and from maybe some other executives, that this is going to set a precedent going forward. I'm going to ask you guys both the same question, but do you think there will be any regrets from either side, strictly talking about the UAW strike today?
I think it depends on whether they're able to settle it relatively amicably. And obviously, if there's a clear winner or loser at the end of this, you will have one half happy, the other half not so happy.
Okay. And Mark, what about you?
I totally agree. I think he's definitely spot on.
Okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. Again, Marick, Wayne State University professor with business, Mark S. Lee. Guys, thank you so much for hopping on this conversation today, talking all things strikes and the economy. Thank these gentlemen very much. We'll be back in just a few minutes.